What you don't know is your greatest asset because it means you're not going to do it like everybody else. 80% of my mental share for 21 years was on Spanx. I just wanted my mental share to be freed up, but it just became clear to me that I became more interested in what my mind would be thinking about if I didn't go through my whole life owning this. The more you experience in life, the more you have to offer others.
Welcome to the Midlife Chrysalis podcast with Chip Conley, where we explore how midlife isn't a crisis, but a chrysalis, a time of profound transformation that can lead to the most meaningful chapter of your life.
Welcome to the Midlife Chrysalis. I'm Chip Conley, and I had the most delightful conversation with my friend Sara Blakely. She is the first female person-made billionaire in the world. She is delightful in the sense that she sang Sarah Smile on this episode. It is her anthem that gets her through the hard times. She talked a lot about what it was like to have an identity, in this case, an entrepreneur who started Spanx, the women's clothing company. And when she sold it at age 50, she felt a little lost because that identity, that midlife identity crisis of letting go of something and not knowing what's next. So it's a very thoughtful and humorous and deep conversation. I think you're going to enjoy it. Sara is a big fan of MEA. She has both been at the MEA campus in Baja, as well as bringing her 11 best girlfriends for their annual vacation at the MEA campus for a private retreat for her 54th birthday earlier this year. So I hope you enjoy it. Sara Blakely, we're catching you after having spent the weekend with Laser. Laser's your oldest son, is that right?
Yep.
And 4 other boys, and it was just you and the 5 boys going to Clearwater, Florida, where you grew up. What was that like?
I mean, just tell me, when does the prefrontal cortex lobe close? Isn't there oh my God. I have to be honest. I kept saying underneath my breath the whole weekend, Dumb and Dumber. I was like, yep, Dumb and Dumber. Yeah, okay, Dumb and Dumber. I mean, they were like, Mom, we want to dig a giant hole in the beach. I'm like, okay. So they all got shovels and they dug for like half a day, and that was thrilling. And then, it's just so cute though. They were actually really great boys. They were super into the wake surfing, the fishing, and being able to bike around the beach. And as a parent, you're on the precipice of your child having a lot more independence, which is wonderful and also scary. And I'm sure every parent feels this way. You're like, have I done enough to prepare this person to make good decisions while driving and with this newfound independence? And I think so, but it's just scary. It's like the first version probably of them leaving the nest.
Mama Blakely, you have 6 kids in my counting, and I'm counting the 2 S's. Spanx is now 25 years old. And Sneaks is maybe 2 or 3 years old.
Sneaks is not even a year old yet, Chip.
I know. We're going to talk about that. So in between, you had Laser, you had the twins, Charlie and Lincoln, and then you had your daughter, Tepper. Is that correct?
I had my first child at 38. I have 4 children, and I got married for the first time and only time at 37.
So yesterday on Instagram, and let's be clear, you have about 1 million followers on Instagram. Your coffee cup, and everybody knows you have famous coffee cups. The only thing I've got is like an ad.
I have that one.
You can't change the cards you were dealt. You just the way you can play the hand. So what kind of hand were you dealt, my dear, and how did you play it?
In life, I was dealt a really good hand. I mean, I really was. I feel like I was dealt a wildly imaginative brain and an inner confidence that really I'm so grateful for. I grew up on a 2.5-mile long sandbar called Clearwater Beach. And I grew up on the south end of the sandbar. And, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had probably all kinds of learning glitches that now would be diagnosed probably with, ADHD and dyslexia and all the things. But I just remember school was tough for me as far as reading. I couldn't really read and retain what I read. So I obviously had to learn different ways of retaining information and learning. But the one thing that I really did at an early age, Chip, was started working on my mindset. Like,
Yeah.
I became an absolute student outside of Clearwater High and outside of school, because we all know it wasn't taught in school, on how to manage my own thoughts and how to manage, in particularly, my negative self-thoughts. It started for me with Wayne Dyer. So I feel like I was dealt a certain hand. I grew up in a hometown that's like really proud that it's the hometown of Hulk Hogan. My husband, who grew up on Long Island, were like in the womb. They were asking what Ivy League school their kids were going to go to. I mean, I grew up on a beach where it was like, are you going to go to college? I don't know. Are you? And so every time Jesse comes home to visit me, he's like, sweetie, don't take this the wrong way, but the fact that you've amounted to anything is even more mind blowing after seeing where you grew up, because it was a beach and it was like,
You had a pretty ambitious father, and an artist mother. You're sort of the mix of both.
my dad was a trial attorney. You're right. He was a litigator. He was a very strategic thinker. And my mom was an artist and a stay at home mom who was very shy and soft spoken. And I would say, struggled with self worth for most of her life. And I am a blend of both for sure. I got both the creativity and then the ability to kind of think a few steps ahead.
One of your favorite Wayne Dyer quotes is, "Nothing will matter more than your opinion of yourself. Do things that make you proud, be kind, crack yourself up." That feels right. How did you get introduced to Wayne Dyer?
So I was a sophomore. I think I was either a freshman or a sophomore at Clearwater High. And my dad and mom were separating. And when my dad was moving out of the house, he came into my bedroom, Chip, and he handed me a cassette tape series in a book.
Oh, you told me this in Baja. Yeah, tell everybody else.
So he handed me a cassette tape series with 10 cassette tapes in like a plastic binder that you opened. And on the front, it said how to be a no limit person. And he handed them to me and he said, sweetie, I wish I was your age when I discovered this instead of the age of 40. And then he left. I always tell people that really dark times always have a hidden blessing. And that was a really tough time for me as a 15, 16-year-old. But I was willing to listen to those cassette tapes because I was hurting so much. So my hidden blessing was I was open, and pain and growth. And you know this better than anyone. Times of transition are ripe for growth. I think any other 15-year-old that was handed this middle-aged man with no hair and a bushy mustache saying, I'm going to change your life, would have chucked it in the bottom of their closet. But I was like, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm going to put this cassette tape in and see what happens. And I sat on the floor of my bedroom and I started to cry. And I thought, I have just spent 16 years of my life in school being taught what to think. And no one has ever taught me how to think.
Ooh, yes.
And I just went, like, wait a minute, what? Like, I can be in the driver's seat of my thoughts. I don't have to be in the back seat. I don't have to be the victim of like whatever's coming in. And maybe I can learn how to harness these thoughts in a way that propels me forward instead of holding me back. Anyway, I started hearing this man talk about manifesting what you want, law of attraction, visualization, not caring what other people think about you, not fearing failure. And as a 16-year-old in high school, like that was pretty profound. And I mean, pretty much the only thing 16-year-olds care about is what other people think about us. So to hear this man come through my, boombox in my bedroom, I was like, whoa, I felt like I was being given the secrets to the universe.
I think more of us as we're growing up need those kinds of influences. I mean, we don't usually get them from our parents, but you got them, by proxy from your father, which was beautiful. And then you went on to college at FSU, Florida State, and you decided law school was not going to be for you.
Not once, but twice, Chip. I'm a terrible test taker, which for me at the time was really tragic and hard for me to wrap my head around because I was a champion debater. I had debated all through high school, all through college. We were like national champions at Florida State in debate. I knew I would have been the most epic lawyer, but the universe was nudging me and letting me know I'm off course, because if the only thing that would have stopped me from becoming a lawyer was failing the LSAT.
So you said the universe. So let's talk about that for just a minute we're going to get into your career in a moment. But the universe is like sitting on your shoulder a lot of times and whispering in your ear. And what recommendations do you have for people to be as much of a conduit as you can be of something to come through you in terms of the little voices and, without making yourself feel like you're crazy? Like, how does the universe come to you?
Okay, well, first of all, it's been happening to me since I'm a little girl, and everyone has access to this. We have access to a universal energy, knowledge, all knowingness, and it's a channel. And I kind of say it's like the old fashioned car radios, where you would like turn the dial, fuzzy, 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 and then all of a sudden, like the song would come in crystal clear, and you'd be like, yes. So I feel like that's what the intuition, the inner knowing, these downloads that we get from the all knowing energy field that only wants the best for us happens. And the more that you listen to it and the more that you honor whatever those fleeting little thoughts or questions that you asked were, I think the stronger the connection gets. So let's start when I was little. When I was little, I really don't know why, but I started creating a mechanism for myself to feel more comfortable in my humanness. I was like a little bit freaked out that like, how did we get here? And I had a lot of existential thoughts from a very early age. And I've had a few, and I'm shared this with you, existential crises in my life, which are pretty profound periods of, I guess you would call it like rumination, and can be depressive thoughts around like, why are we here? Where did we come from? What is this all about? I think as a very early age, I started creating good luck symbols for myself that told me that like this team of angels, light, whatever you want to call it, the universal energy, God was looking out for me through a song and then my lucky number. I kind of created coping mechanisms as a little girl. I was like, okay, I'm scared and I feel like I'm kind of on my own here in a lot of ways. Like if I'm on the right track, if I'm here for a reason, if I'm doing the right thing, I remember having those thoughts, show me the number 27 or play this song, Sarah's Smile. That's my good luck song from Daryl Hall and John Oates. And then like it just started like that. And then I started,
Will you sing it for us? You want to sing the opening lines?
I have the worst voice ever, but yes, I will. Oh, won't you smile a while for me, Sarah? Sarah, smile. It's so good. It's like a song that came out in the 70s. And as a little girl, I was like, okay, people are trying to communicate with me through this song. When I hear it on the radio, it means I'm safe, I'm on the right track. So then I started asking the universe questions around it. Then I'd be very specific. I'd say, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to do this or, should I go to camp? Should I not? If I am supposed to go to camp, show me the number 27 and like make it quick, like in the next day or two. And then I would start to kind of frame decision making around this. And I've been using signs from the universe to make key decisions throughout my life, my whole entire life.
Wow. And you are 27 times 2 these days. You're 54, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, you had your 54th birthday party with 11 friends here at our Santa Fe MEA campus. But we'll come back. We'll come back to that. Let's go back to, okay, so you didn't go to law school. You start selling fax machines door to door, which I bet you were pretty persuasive. I hope you didn't have to carry them with you. Did you?
I did.
Oh, Jesus.
In pantyhose, in high heels, in Florida, in the summer. Oh my God. So I was the delivery department too. So I wouldn't always have them with me walking in the door. I'd walk in the door and go, hey, I'm Sara. Do you need a fax machine? And they'd usually escort me out of the building or rip up my business card and say no soliciting. But for the few accounts that didn't, I would trial one and I'd go back to the headquarters, get the fax machine, put it in my trunk, and then drive it there and then carry it in and like crawl on the floor and plug it in and learn how to set it up. It was remember that part being so stressful.
Wow. Okay. So how you did it for not just like a month or two, you did it for an extended period of time.
7 years, Chip, man, 7 years.
And during that time, you realized that your pantyhose were in a bundle. It wasn't comfortable. And so you decided to create your own little version of what ultimately became Spanx. You sort of prototyped it. What do you call this? What do you call the Spanx? You call them
Shapewear or an
shapewear,
undergarment?
shapewear.
So here's the deal. You're cracking me up. I got interviewed by Coach K from Duke. This isn't you, but I love it when men are interviewing me about Spanx. Coach K tried to interview me for a new show he was doing for like 40 minutes without saying the word panty. And so finally I looked at him and I'm like, panty, it's okay. You can say it. He turned bright red. I was like, this isn't your wheelhouse, is it, Coach K? And he was like, no, it was cute. Anyway, I'll tell you what I did. The soundbite in the media chip for 25 years now was Sara Blakely cut the feet out of her pantyhose and Spanx was born. But what wasn't in the media was that I set the intention for this 2 years prior. So I was 25 years old. I was had just been kicked out of a lot of offices, cold calling fax machines. It was a particularly bad day. I pulled off the side of the road and I remember thinking to myself, I'm in the wrong movie. Like I'm in the wrong movie. Call the producer, call the director, cut. This is not my life. I need to I don't want to be the star of this movie anymore. So I went home and I wrote, what the hell are you good at, Sara? Like what are your possibilities? Like, and so the only thing in my good column was sales. And I asked myself a really important question. Instead of just identifying that my strength was sales, I asked myself why. And if I hadn't asked myself why, Chip, I would have gone to get another sales job. I would have left Danka and gone and sold something else. But by saying, why do I like sales? And why am I good at this? And why is this a strength? I uncovered, oh, wait, I really like selling something or giving something to someone that changes their life, improves their life, or makes them feel good. Like I had already seen the businesses flourish from me selling them this fax machine, right? Before that, it was like snail mail, right? And then all of a sudden I'm showing them this machine where you put the paper in and dial a number and whatever you wrote could go to China.
Magic. I remember. It was so crazy.
It was so crazy. I was selling fax machines so early on, Chip, that my biggest objection was, well, who in the hell am I going to fax?
Well, you do need someone on the other end to fax it to, right? I mean, it's like,
So I set the intention. And when I said why, I knew that it's because I loved offering something to someone that made them feel better or change their life. And then I had this epiphany. Well, why don't I create my own product? Wouldn't that be the most fun journey instead of selling someone else's product? I had no idea what it was going to be, Chip. I wrote down, I want to invent something that will change millions of people's lives for the better. And then I said, universe, give me the idea and I will not squander it. Like, show it to me, have it arrive. And it was 2 years later that I was getting ready for a party and I couldn't figure out what to wear under white pants because all the undergarments showed. And I called my friends who were models and I'm like, guys, you're in these ads. What did you wear under these pants? Like, I bought the pants and they're hanging in my closet. And they're like, oh, we're airbrushed. I was like, okay, that's great. But what is the what is the average woman at home supposed to do who doesn't have an airbrush, you know? And that's where Spanx was born. I came up with a revolutionary new type of undergarment. I took something that had existed forever, 70 years, which was pantyhose, but I cut the feet out of it. And the reason I wanted to use that material, Chip, was because it was so thin. It was like tissue paper. So it didn't add bulk to what you were wearing and it was breathable and it was like a second skin. So it created this perfect canvas for all of your clothing. Whereas anything prior to Spanx was thick, hot, flawed, left a big line or bulge on your thigh where this big leg band was. And then came this product that had already existed in one medium. And it took me a long time to convince the men, like, no, I don't even want to see the pantyhose. Cause they're like, it's always supposed to be seen on the leg. This is why we're making it. I'm like, I want to repurpose it and create an undergarment with your material.
So how did you do that? I mean, you're not like a product person. You're selling fax machines, and like, who did you go to like prototype this? You did it yourself, I know initially, but like, how did you get to the point where you could create that very thin layer for the shapewear that you were doing?
Well, because I was a consumer of it, I had to wear it as my dress code selling fax machines. So I knew how lightweight it was. I knew the like slimming and firming and smoothing effect it had on me. So I thought if I could just have like an undergarment that no one sees made out of this material that didn't leave lines or bulges or anything, I could wear white, I could wear cream, I could wear silk, I could wear all these fabrics that hang in my closet. I used the universe a lot, Chip. I mean, I had $5,000 from selling fax machines. I did not have a business class. I'd never taken it. I didn't have contacts in the industry. but I had the universe. And started asking the universe, give me guidance. Is this my idea? I asked for my idea. Is this it? Give me courage to keep going. And I just started calling manufacturers, looking them up on the internet. They were all in North Carolina. I wrote my own patent. I bought a book at Barnes and Noble and wrote a patent.
Oh my God. Well, there's your legal side of you. Um,
So I just honestly fumbled my way through it. Like most founders, you know this, you're learning as you go.
and you came up with the name too.
Yeah.
That wasn't that you were driving in your car, if I recall. I don't know. And the name came to you, Spanx. The thing that's interesting about your story, Sara, is that it was almost immediately successful. I mean, maybe there was a little bit of time where you had some indecision about it, et cetera. But no, instead, you went out and sold yourself to Neiman Marcus, going from fax machines to Neiman Marcus, and you were relentless. And then Oprah picked it up pretty quickly. Talk about the time. So going from year 2000 to 2012, because by 2012, Forbes called you the youngest self-made, maybe the only self-made female billionaire in the world. Because also the thing that a lot of people need to know, and those of you who are business people out there, just think about this. You've self-funded this damn thing. And so talk a little bit about that period from 2000 to 2012. Along the way in 2008, you got married to Jesse. I'm curious about that dozen years and then Jesse showing up and why it took so long for a Jesse to come into your life as well.
Yeah. I mean, I was pretty focused on growing this business. I was self-funded. So Spanx was solely funded by the $5,000 that I had from selling fax machines. Never had any outside investors for the whole journey. I would say that I was really focused on three things. I was like, make it, sell it, build awareness. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know how to read a spreadsheet. I didn't know anything, but I was like, I've come across a product that I love that I think is going to fill a hole in a lot of women's lives and wardrobes. And let me find every avenue I possibly can to sell it. And let me find every way to build awareness. So I started calling TV channels and radio stations. I went all across the country doing events in all the Neiman, Saks, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, selling it myself for them. Because once I got the opportunity to be sold in their store, that's where I say most entrepreneurs might be like, I've arrived, I landed Neiman's. And I was like, I hit the road for 2 years and worked every day, including Sundays for 2 years, selling the product in the store for them because I wasn't going to leave the fate of my idea in the hands of people that were making, X amount of dollars in the sleepy corner of the hosiery department of the store.
Yep. You decided to cross fertilize. I was listening to you on Hoda. Hoda was one of my first interviews for this podcast. And she's a good friend. And so I learned from listening to that about the fact that you went to all the departments because you didn't want to get pigeonholed just in hosiery. Tell us more about that.
Well, I realized once I was standing in the store where my customers were, and I actually had a chance to sell to them, that I was in the sleepiest corner of the store. I was in the hosiery department where no one was going anymore. Hosiery was kind of phasing out in society. And I was like, wait, this is not hosiery. This is an undergarment that's going to allow you to wear that couture gown or to wear the really great strappy sandals you want with the white capri pants. So I went to the stores and I bought stands from Office Depot and I put them at every cash register at Neiman Marcus, which has the strictest visuals on the planet. And everybody thought somebody else approved it before they figured out that nobody approved it. So I was doing everything I could to get baby out of the corner. Like nobody puts baby in the corner. I'm like, I got to get Spanx out of the corner. So wherever I could put it in the store, I did. I won over all the salespeople. I did morning rallies every morning across the United States. And what I ended up doing was building a sales force not on my payroll that were all rooting for me. And also I always say this, you always want to give them a what's in it for them. So I would really make it clear to the women who sold couture gowns what was in it for them. And then the men and the women selling the shoes. And I was like, you're going to sell more shoes. You're going to sell more gowns. You're going to be able to sell these clothes if you tell your customers about Spanx. And it just took off from there. It was very organic. I built this global brand and it became a household name without advertising, Chip. So Spanx didn't spend any money on advertising for 16 years.
Wow.
So it was just a lot of me being willing to tell the story and the why. I say people are far more interested in the problem you're solving than the product you're selling. And I led with the problem, which was men had been making our undergarments for a really long time and they were a little bit dysfunctional and not super comfortable. And so I was really determined to give women better options. And then also, I was determined to explain why it mattered to me. And I think that that really made a lot of women want to share it with other women. Because if you think about what I invented, nobody saw it. On top of me having like no budget, I'm going against Hanes and Sara Lee, these billion-dollar companies. I'm out of my apartment. I have 5 grand. No one sees my product. So it couldn't become this viral moment of like, hey, what are you wearing?
Well, unless they flash it at you.
Which they do. But it took women sharing it. And for the first time ever, women on the red carpet started saying, hey, I'm wearing something called Spanx underneath my gown, which had never happened before.
Amazing grit and grace. There's this beautiful combination, Sara, of grit and grace and tenacity and grace. I love it. But at almost 50, you and I have something, we have a few things in common, but one of the things we have in common is that we had this thing that we loved. For you, you were had been running it for 21 years, I think, at that point. For me, with my boutique hotel company, Joie de Vivre, I'd been running it for 24 years, had 3,500 employees at that point, 52 hotels. At 50, both of us decided it's time. And so maybe talk a little bit about that. You decided to sell a majority share to Blackstone, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, huge private equity firm. And what led to that? And then I actually started to get to know you after that because guess what? You had had an identity since your late 20s that and for me, it was since age 26. And I know how hard that is when you have lived your life around this identity and you now don't have the identity anymore. Although you certainly did, but you didn't have the decision making. You were in a whole different era. So talk about that process. Why did you decide to sell? And what was it like? Because that was a bit of a midlife chrysalis for you.
That's how I found you.
That's how you found me in MEA.
It was Ritual, I believe, that was interviewing you. I was in a significant amount of grief and pain and really searching and feeling like I needed guidance. And then I hear you on a podcast. So I had no idea what MEA was, Modern Elder Academy. So I Googled it after I listened to your podcast and I signed up and I went for 7 days, didn't know anybody. But I loved that someone was taking midlife and trying to reframe it and saying, wait a minute, like, are we doing enough in society to prepare people for this massive transition that happens around the age of 50? I mean, you've listed them at your workshop, but it's like you become an empty nester a lot of the time. You have aging parents. You might be reevaluating your career or your career might be coming to an end. I mean, there is a cataclysmic of like mush that happened.
And perimenopause. Come on, let's
That is so brutal. Yes. So, and for a woman, your hormones are radically changing. So for me, it was a lot. And to answer your question about Spanx, I I had been asked since I started it what my exit strategy was. And I didn't know what an exit strategy meant. Like I'd never taken a business class. So all these guys were asking me 6 months into me starting, what's your exit strategy? So what's your I was like, and so one day I just go, my exit strategy is I want to exit a room and look good. That's it. My exit strategy. And that became my tagline forever. And I kind of blew it off and I didn't take anybody seriously that was interested in buying Spanx. And then I kind of started going, oh, what is my exit strategy? And what does that really mean? And, you know, to your point about identity, I am the Spanx girl, like Spanx and Sara Blakely. Like most people who meet me, they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you're the Spanx girl, right?
Yeah.
So, and partly that happened because I had no budget to advertise. So I was the advertisement. Like me telling my story of my why became this very meshed fabric of the foundation of the company in culture. So I always tap into intuition and I kept saying to people, I'll just know. Well, for I would say many years, this was not quick. This was many years in the making. I kept getting this, what I call this little tap, this like knowing. And what I like to say is I feel like spirit was tapping me. Okay. And ego was going like this. Ego was like, yeah, not now, whatever. And spirit was like, okay, Okay. And so I could no longer ignore this tap that kept coming from spirit. And spirit knew that I needed to move on in some way and let go in some way. Right. And the core reason why I sold was not for money. Spanx was very profitable. Literally from the first month in business, I was profitable, which is, so wildly interesting now that I learn a lot more about business. I'm like, oh, wow. But it was also because I was bootstrapping it so much. I just wanted my mental share to be freed up. I wanted two things. I wanted to experience um, having my mind wander more easily to something else. And I knew intuitively, and some people can do this, I knew I couldn't. I 80% of my mental share for 21 years was on Spanx.
Yeah.
And I had to make a decision. Sara, you love this so much. It's basically your first child. Like you birthed it, you grew it, you've spent every waking ounce of your life, soul's work on building this for the consumer and honoring the consumer and honoring the team that you've built here. But, you know, it just became clear to me that I became more interested in what my mind would be thinking about if I didn't go through my whole life owning this. And that's hard because that means you have to turn it over to somebody else. That means you have to be willing to sell it. And when I made that decision that I wanted to free up my own mental share to see where it goes, what would I dream of? What would I think about? Where would I be? Like, I remember specifically sitting on the road trip and going, if I don't sell Spanx, I kind of know in 5 years from now what I'm talking about, what I'm thinking about, the meetings I'm in, and what I'm discussing. And if I sell Spanx, I don't know. And that became more interesting to me. But man, it put me through it was so hard to let go of something I love this much. I still own a big chunk of it. So I am still the chairwoman of the board. I don't own the majority, which was important to me because for me to achieve free mental share, I knew I had to give up control, which was hard. I mean, it was very hard. I mourned it. And I told you this at the workshop, or I told everyone there, it's not on society's checklist of grief when you sell your company for a lot of money, right? Most people are kind of like, wow, great, congratulations. And then you get the barrage of like, so what's next? Or, why did you sell it? And at that time, I was in such a vulnerable emotional state. Those questions were very triggering for me. But I operate in quotes, and the three quotes that best describe my 18 months that I got put into fight or flight mode with my nervous system after selling was in order to discover new land, you must be willing to lose sight of the shore. And it can be really uncomfortable when you're out at sea and you do not see land, especially when you just jumped off of like a really safe, comfortable big boat or whatever. That's pretty predictable. You're like, why did I do that? And then the second quote is you can miss it and still not want it back. And the third quote is you can make the right decision and still be sad.
And the sadness you had to honor. And as is true for many entrepreneurs, when I sold my company Joie de Vivre, and it's a Hyatt brand now, JDV, there was, yes, the fear of the unknown, but there was also the excitement of that. But there was also sadness. And I realized that in many ways, as an entrepreneur, I had been outrunning my emotions. And that may sound familiar to you. There were emotions that I was outrunning, and I was like, oh, wow, now I have to deal with that. That work addiction I think I've got. Okay, what am I going to fill in the space of that? And the good news is that I took and you did too, what we call at MEA a midlife atrium, the idea of some space to reimagine and repurpose yourself. Because quite frankly, in a world in which longevity is real and we're living longer lives and we don't really have a roadmap to understand midlife and beyond, it's not, the additional longevity is not like an extra bedroom in the backyard of life. No, it's looking at your midlife and asking yourself, how do I want to consciously curate the second half of my life? And I did that for 2 years, from 50 to 52. You did it around the same time. And for me, I ended up getting a call from Brian Chesky saying, hey, Chip, in fact, you and Brian, I think were hanging out together not long ago. Brian Chesky called me and said, like, this was 13 years ago. we have this little tech startup that we want to be a hospitality company when we grow up. And will you come in? And ultimately, he called me the modern elder. And he said, you're as curious as you are wise. And that's what happened in my midlife atrium. What happened in your midlife atrium is you got to spend some time with the family. You went on some road trips. And then there was this idea that you'd had that you were the customer that started to sneak into your consciousness. And the next thing you knew, you were like excited. And then you also put it on hold for a little while. Talk about the sneak story.
One thing that I just want to honor and say about that transition when you said, there's a lot of emotions that you may have been not even intentionally running from, but that fuel us, right? There's so much fuel that happens. And I learned this at your academy. The first part of life is proving, and then you move into improving. And improving is less outward facing and more inward, which is a huge shift. And I will say the thing that I felt the biggest shift for me with was I was in major prove energy. And I have been improving energy since I was 3. Like I have this, and I think a lot of it has to do with, yeah. I mean, everyone's different. I'm curious what yours was. I mean, a lot of times it could be like proving to a parent, but for me, I was literally proving to patriarchy. I remember being 3 years old and having, like, on a cellular level going, "Wait a minute, this something doesn't feel right, like, this doesn't feel right." Like, my mom's role and the women that I knew, there's just I was like, I felt a deep desire for women to be elevated and to be honored in a different way than and for them not to dim their lights, including my own mother. And I felt also like I deeply wanted the respect of men. I didn't really want the attention. I mean, the attention was fine and felt good, but I was like, I really want the respect. And so for me to be spending so much of my energy in my life proving, and yes, there's also the whole component of like, I deeply want to honor women and give them better options. And I love using creativity to come up with products to do that. So there's that. But when you don't have anything left to prove, technically, like, who are you? And I was just sitting in this midlife moment going, if I don't have anything else to prove, like, am I going to be motivated to do anything? And like, if I don't have to prove something, why do I do anything? And who am I in that way? And so I was really trying to excavate, like, what do you want to do just for joy? Or what do you want to do just for like, and that I'm still working on that, like it's an interesting thing. And for me as a woman, I had a lot of momentum around proving and like living the life my mother didn't really get to live and my grandmother's, and wanting, deep respect from my dad in a way that was different than I felt that he felt towards my mom and other women in his life. There's just a lot there. But moving that aside, I had this dream and vision to also invent a comfortable high heel. And I had been saying that for 10 years publicly. And I kept lobbing it out like, someone please do this. I'm in a lot of pain. I love wearing heels, but they hurt my feet. And after 10 years, nobody took the bait. I still, as a consumer, could not find a high heel that felt comfortable to me. And so I decided to ask the universe for a sign. The universe delivered a very clear sign to me. And I said, okay, I'll do it. I'm going to try.
What was it? Can you tell us what the sign was?
Yeah, there were 2 signs. It was crazy. So real quick, I finally woke up one day and I was like, I've been saying this for a while. Universe, am I supposed to be the one to try this? Like, if I am, give me a really clear sign. And I always say this to the universe and I go, and it can't be a rainbow. Like, it has to be really specific. So like 2 days later, I flip on the morning news and it was Gayle King interviewing a shoe designer on hard news, which was already weird, right? Like in the morning, it's hard stories. So I was like, oh, I just asked for a sign. That's weird. She's interviewing the shoe designer. She picks up the shoes. She goes, listen, I love your shoes. They are a work of art. But I got to tell you, by the end of the day, I could be crippled. And as a product person who spent my whole life trying to make the consumer, especially women, feel loved and supported and valued in how they feel and not just how they look, he looked at her and he goes, I do not want my shoes to be comfortable.
Oh, God.
And then he said, in fact, if someone tells me that my shoes are comfortable, I take it as an insult. So I was like, all right, Okay, universe. Not only are they not working on it, which I tricked my brain into thinking, I'm like, they don't care. So I'm going to stand up and raise my hand. I know nothing about shoes the way I knew nothing about undergarments, but I want to like raise my hand on behalf of women and see if I can give us a better option. 10 years, lots of trial, getting fired from factory after factory in Italy and Spain. I launched Sneaks, which ended up being a hybrid of sort of like a sneaker and a stiletto. And I wanted to start with stiletto, Chip, because it's the least comfortable, right? Like I like starting with the worst problem. Like, for me, it was like girdles. I was like, "These stink, like, I need to make this more comfortable." So, I ended up merging a classic sneaker. I solved 3 pain points really quick. I widened the toe box for the woman's toes. I redistributed the weight. High heels since the 1700s without much change, Chip. 80% of the weight is on the ball of our foot and 20% is on the heel, and I redistribute it. So when you're standing in the heel, even though you're in a 3-inch stiletto, you almost feel like the weight is 50-50. So you don't feel all that pressure on the ball of your foot. And then I gave whole foot support, whereas in traditional high heels, it's usually kind of suspended here and here. And I filled it in and gave the whole foot support. It is a mind bender when you put my shoes on. They're called Sneaks, Sneex. But when you stand in them, you're in a 3-inch stiletto and you're like, wait, I kind of feel like I'm flat on the ground in a sneaker. Like, is this really real? Is this happening? And I wanted to invent the most comfortable stiletto. 4 years into the journey, Chip, I had to pull the plug. I told the team to make it look exactly like our high heels that we were used to wearing, but be exponentially more comfortable. We made it more comfortable, but it wasn't exponential. So the 2 girls I'd pulled off onto the team from Spanx that were bra designers that had dedicated 4 years of their life to this, I said, "Guys, we didn't get it over the finish line. It's okay. We tried." And as I was leaving the factory in Italy, I said, "I don't know why this has been so hard. I just want my high heel to feel like my sneaker." We're in the year of 20 whatever. We shot a go-kart out in Mars, and we're driving it by remote control from Earth. Like, what is happening? Why is this so hard? And in the moment I said that, Chip, I paused and I looked at my friends and they were like, "Sara, no, Sara, no." And I went home and I cut my sneaker in half and my high heel in half and glued them together and walked around my house for 3 days.
You didn't break an ankle or anything like that, no?
I didn't break an ankle, but I was like, "Could I make this work? 'Cause this is really weird, but like this could solve a lot of problems." And so I was willing to pivot my innovation and my creativity and the original brief, which the original brief was it has to look exactly like a stiletto. And instead, I've got one here on the floor, but like it turned into this. And so, there's a lot of like there's so much more stability in the heel and women are rocking them and wearing them in all different ways, but I'm happy that I've given them for those who want it another option. That's all this is, and it's changed my life because I had to stop wearing heels until Sneaks.
I just want to call this out because I think a lot of people are not familiar with this, but when someone has a huge success as their first thing that they do in the world, it gives them identity, it gives them a sense of momentum. In your case, you've stayed humble, thank God. In my case, I think I did the same. But, Elizabeth Gilbert, famous for Eat, Pray, Love, good friend, taught at both of our campuses. When she had her success with Eat, Pray, Love, it was really hard for her because everybody's thinking about the follow-up. What are you going to follow up with? I was lucky because my follow-up was not starting a new business. It was going into an existing small tech business that nobody had heard of and helping it become very successful. So it was a little easier because I was able to change my identity, although it did require a lot of changes in my mindset. I was no longer CEO. I was reporting to Brian, who was 21 years younger than me, but I was also his mentor. But in your case, this is a hard one because there's an element of Sara knowing I got off the ground in 2000 and was immediately successful, and everybody, and I was doing it. And if I wasn't successful, nobody would know about it. But now I've got Sneaks and everybody's watching me, and there's this element of like, oh, can she do it again? So there's some pressure. But then at the same time, if you've moved from proving to improving, maybe you're just like laughing at yourself and the situation. But talk a little bit about the psychology of what it's been like to launch Sneaks and the upside and the downside of doing this as the follow-up, the sequel.
So I had done enough work on myself. I don't care at all about the second act or trying. There's not an ounce of me that's trying to outdo the first one. I recognize this for being very different. I appreciate that other people might be thinking about that, but I am not. I'll tell you where I paused and where I got really emotionally worked up was, is this going to take over my life? And that was what I did not have the answer for. And I literally paused the launch an entire year. And the reason that I did it, I had all the shoes. I made no changes in that year to the shoes. I had this small, mighty team that was really excited about launch. I'd already done 2 interviews with press, Chip. They were like launching the articles on like that Thursday. And on Tuesday, I woke up in the morning and I sat straight up in bed. I clenched the sheets of my bed and I went, it was almost like I couldn't even breathe. And I go, it's not the right time. It's just not the right time. And I called my team and I was crying and there were tears. And I said, guys, I'm really sorry, but it is not the right time. And I need to push this back. And they go, no problem, Sarah, no problem. I think they were expecting me to say like in 2 weeks or a month. And I said, I'm going to launch it next year at the same time next year. And there was like a breath. I'm like, guys, and what I wasn't clear about in that moment was, am I doing sneaks to fill this void of this vacuum that I created? Like, am I going to get on the same treadmill and am I doing the same thing? And am I doing the same playbook because I'm in this anxious space? Or is this an honor? Is this an offering that I want to make to women for all the right reasons? And am I going to have the right boundaries in my life to protect it from becoming my life? And my husband kept saying, Sarah, you're not the girl with the red backpack anymore. You're like Sarah now at this age. You have money, you have funds. Like, this is going to feel different. And I think I was so scared I was going to leave my family and go stand like selling shoes in department stores for 2 years. I don't know what I thought, but maybe just PTSD from how hard I worked to get the
Yeah.
first one off the ground. And then it's been nothing but lovely. Like, I put it out in the world. It's an offering. It's doing phenomenal. I've got a small little team that are really inspired to make luxury high heels better and more comfortable, and shoes in general, right? Like, I'm not going to just do high heels. I started there because that's the most uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
I'm excited to play in this. It gives my creativity an arena. I care deeply about women and how they feel. So it's checking a lot of boxes. And I launched with a product that's really, people have really strong opinions about it, which I love. Like, it created a lot of conversation, love and hate, which, Chip, this, whenever you're doing anything really, truly disruptive, that comes with it. To me, that's a good sign. Like, no one was talking about it and half the country wasn't like, I'm not sure if I like this and what's going on. Then I don't think I would have been disappointed.
What was the psychological shift you had to make in that year to give you the breathing room? Was it just realizing that you were in no longer in the proving mode, and your definition of success was just getting to the starting line, and you didn't have to repeat the Spanx financial success? What was it?
No, I was already there when I made that decision. I was like, this doesn't have to be the next Spanx. This can be a small cult following. Like, I was cool with whatever this is meant to be. I have a lot more like, universe, you take this and make with it what it's supposed to be and guide the right people to join this team. Whereas Spanx was like, no matter what, like, no matter what, this is like, I'm making this happen. And so for me, I also was not in a good emotional place. Like, I was still very grieving. And I think I was still very chemically imbalanced from perimenopause. And I think I had no idea the severe impact perimenopause was having on me, because I just thought my mental state was mostly a result of selling because it was such a big life decision. And I couldn't see clearly that the emotions and the imbalance and the sadness and the ups and downs and everything that I was experiencing was actually hormonal and chemical. So I went on a journey that year. I traveled with my family and I also spent a lot of time on my health and understanding what was going on in me emotionally. But I was in a really emotionally tough space from perimenopause. Like, I figured out, like, I had something called PMDD, I think it's called, which just means perimenopause on steroids. Like, a lot of women's estrogen starts to go like this in a gradual decline, which causes a lot of, symptoms and can cause sadness, can cause all kinds of things. I'm in this 10% bucket where my estrogen goes like this. So
Up and
on
down,
its
up and
on its
down.
way out, it's like going straight up and then plummeting and straight up and plummeting. So
Yeah.
my symptoms were pretty severe and extreme, and I wasn't sleeping. And so then someone said, Sarah, why don't you try something called progesterone? And I started taking progesterone at night. And within 2 days, I was like, oh, well, that's weird. I could sleep and I felt like my old self again. And I was like, not crying all the time. I was like, wow, I can't believe I went 18 months without taking progesterone or recognizing that that could be playing a role.
I did have to deal with hormone depletion therapy because of my prostate cancer, which means my testosterone went to zero. So I had all of the physical, not the psychological, but the physical symptoms of menopause. So hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, all of that. So I have a ton of respect for women. And I think all men should have to go through menopause or perimenopause just because, guess what? Women do so much. So I have a couple last questions. First of all, I just love you. I just love you. I love you.
Well, I want everyone listening to know that I've been to both, like you did start another company after your beautiful stint at a small company called Airbnb, right? You ended up creating Modern Elder Academy, and I found you through a podcast, but I went for a week to your location in Cabo, which is an epic, beautifully done, of course, with all the chip magic boutique hotel right on the sand. And I joined a group of like 30 people I didn't know. And we talked about reframing midlife. And I had a wonderful, beautiful experience there. And it was wonderful. And I still have great friends from that. And then I liked it so much that I surprised my core childhood friends. And every year since I turned 35, so this was our 19th year. So when I started, every year on my birthday, I take 10 of my childhood friends away on a surprise vacation, and they don't know where they're going. It's a full surprise. All they're told is hot, cold, or passport, and that's all they know. And these are working moms, most of them who never get, they plan everything in their life. They're exhausted. And so I was like, when I was 35, I'm like, I have this new success. What do I want to do with it? I'm like, I want to spoil the people I love that wouldn't normally do this for themselves. So it's been a tradition, 19 years. And this year I surprised them and took them to your new location in Santa Fe. And we had an epic time. And it's had a profound impact on all the women, but there's probably 3 or 4 out of the 10 that I would say it has really, really shifted things in a positive way for them.
Well, and one of them was your sister-in-law. And between her and you, they convinced your brother to come down to Baja. And I got to spend some time with him. What a beautiful man he is.
He's such a beautiful soul. My brother's more introverted. He does not like social gatherings make him very anxious. And he's very also analytical. He's more, he has an accounting degree and a finance degree. And he spent 5 to 6 months quietly thinking about whether he would have the courage to go do that. I didn't know that. And then he called me, Chip, do you want to know the funny thing? Because I had offered to send him. Like he could go on his own, but like I was like, I feel this strongly about it. I'll pay for it if you want to go. And he was like, I don't think that's my thing. I don't think that's my thing. And then I don't know where I was. I think I was in Hawaii at a girls' retreat recently. And he called and he goes, so Sarah, Chip's thing is tomorrow. And I'm like, what thing? And he's like, the MEA thing, there's an opening and there's still an opening and it starts tomorrow. And I was like, and are you thinking about going? He goes, I am. I go, well, the offer still stands. And then I was like, but he decided the night before and he didn't want to tell anybody he was thinking about it because he didn't want pressure. He loved it. He had the best time. It's been very meaningful for him too. I really recommend everybody go.
He's a role model for men because, a lot of men have a hard time getting vulnerable in a personal growth retreat workshop, but often the men need it more. Partly because women are so good about communicating with each other about what's going on in their life. And for a lot of men, part of the reason I started MEA was because I lost 5 male friends to suicide, ages 42 to 52, during the Great Recession. 3 of them entrepreneurs whose businesses had gone under. But so I want to, 2 last questions. One is, one of the things we say at MEA is that, as we get older, time becomes the most valuable asset in our life. 10 years from now, what would you regret if you didn't learn it or do it now? Because anticipated regret is a form of wisdom.
Spend significant time with friends and family in places that bring me a lot of peace and happiness. Like I'm in a situation now where I can spoil the people I love and I can coordinate things where I can get family members and extended family together that maybe wouldn't have happened if I didn't have this opportunity. So I'm really going to lean into that. I want to be in the present moment. I want I want to look back 10 years from now and say the last 10 years I was really present. I don't know if you found this, but as a founder and an entrepreneur, I had a very hard time being in the present moment.
Yeah.
I really did. Like, I never really mastered that. There's just 1,000 things going through my mind as a founder and an entrepreneur at all times, and things were being sent to us like daily. It's like being an entrepreneur, you're in a mild state or a major state of fight or flight the whole
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
because you're just kind of like bracing yourself for what's coming to you. And so I really feel like I wasn't in the present moment as much in the last bit of my journey. So I want that to happen.
Just a quick question. Do you think you'll ever retire?
No.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's a funny thing. We are of a generation, we're of an age, although I'm 10 years older than you, where like retirement, like, ooh, what is that? All right. So last question is this.
So not in my DNA. Like,
No, it's
even
not in your DNA. Not
like,
in,
it's not in our DNA. If I
no,
was
it's
like,
not.
okay, I'm going to retire and I'm just going to garden. I mean, within 2 days in my garden, I would probably think of how to create a business around my garden. It would just happen. I'd be like, oh, more people need tomatoes. I'm going to set up a stand on the corner of my street. I'm going to start sourcing tomatoes. I could make tomato sauce out of this. This is amazing.
For a lot of us, if we know that we're never going to retire, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, how will I curate my life differently if I know I never will retire? Meaning, how are you spending time with family, friends, etc.? How do you take that time with your family? You took that year off. How did I do my midlife atrium? How do I know that for me, Sunday is my Sabbath? And I try to just go for long hikes. And I'm an extrovert. I was an extrovert through most of my younger years, although I was an extreme introvert as a kid. And I'm converting back to being an introvert. And so I know I need my space on a Sunday. So
I love that. I could talk to you on a whole nother podcast about introvert and extrovert and like, because I thought maybe it was set, like you're born an extrovert or you're born an introvert, but I really think it changes throughout your life.
you could be an ambivert. Well, I think so. We're going to keep going for a moment on this one then, because you're interested. So the research is fascinating. I'm a geek. I love social science research to look at this. And around age 45 or 50, people start to go a little more interior. We spent our life being exterior. You go a little interior. And that can mean a lot of things. It can mean you start getting more curious about spirituality and religion. Again, these are all averages here. But it also, for a lot of people, means that they go to a space where they start to enjoy their own company a little bit more. And they start editing the things in their life that they don't want to do. And as a result, for a lot of people, 3 times as many people around age 50 move from extrovert to introvert as compared to the opposite, moving from introvert to extrovert. So it is part of the life stage of midlife. It doesn't necessarily mean we become hermits, and it does mean for me, I start a workshop today. I'm here in Santa Fe. I have a workshop starting later today. I got to be an extrovert in a workshop. But I also know that at the end of the workshop, and maybe even in the midst of the workshop, I'm going to take some time to myself. So learning how to be, as we get older, we become alchemists of our polarities. Masculine, feminine, introvert, extrovert, curious, wise, gravitas, depth, levity, laughter, secular, religious. The best people I know who are 85 years old and present are people who have learned not to be compartmentalized, but to be integrated. They integrate and alchemize those polarities. So,
well, my largest, if I elevate 10,000 feet up, what do I care the most about? I care the most about the masculine and feminine energy becoming more balanced, not only within ourselves, but on the planet. And I think most of the things I care deeply about will resolve themselves or heal when that balance happens. And I think the feminine energy on the planet for about 3,000 years has been pretty squashed. And I think we're all suffering as a result. And I say energy because we're all made up of masculine and feminine energy. I don't even see it as gender as much as I do a true feminine energy. And when I started Spanx, I knew that business was a very masculine construct. I was like, this was created by men. It was invented by men. The rules were made by men. What success looks like was defined by man. And I'm not a man, I'm a woman. And so I didn't have any voice in how all this got constructed. what would it look like for me? Like what, and that's part of why I was really careful about getting investors. I was like, I'd rather bootstrap it and kind of honor this divine feminine and this knowing inside of me along with my masculine, but I didn't want to squash the feminine to get to where I wanted to be. And so I was very intentional about trying to create Spanx with a lot more feminine energy, which at the time, it's getting better, but at the time, feminine was really seen as a weakness, in my opinion. It felt like it wasn't taken seriously. And I saw it as a superpower.
Well, have been a role model for that for sure. So imagine, last question, that as the role model, a woman 20 years younger than you approaches you and says, I bought in the auction a tea with Sara, or actually matcha. You like matcha, don't you?
Yeah.
Matcha with Sara, and getting matcha with you next week and spending some time with you. Will you come to that meeting with a bumper sticker? It doesn't, not a physical one, but just in your mind, a wisdom bumper sticker, a piece of wisdom that you have learned along the way in life or in business or whatever it is, that really defines what you've learned, and what's the origin story for that learning? Where did if there's a Sara Blakely wisdom bumper sticker with your fingerprints on it, what might it be? And of course, there's many, but and what's the origin story? How did you learn that?
I mean, you're leaving me with just a really light last question, Chip. Well, I mean, two bumper stickers came to mind. The first one is my life motto that I have for a long time, which is the more you experience in life, the more you have to offer others. And so, what that did was by framing life experiences to be in service of others, it made me have more courage to say yes to a lot more things that scared me. And then the second thing I would probably say is, what you don't know can be your greatest asset if you let it. So, not knowing how something's supposed to be done can be your advantage if you can get over the mindset and the negative self-talk of telling you like you're not the expert or why you or if you so it comes with that mindset courage that you have to develop like a muscle. But what you don't know is your greatest asset because it means you're not going to do it like everybody else.
That's exactly right. And my dear, you have not been doing it like anybody else. Thank you so much for coming to the Midlife Chrysalis and to tell your story, but also with the frame of midlife. It's a life stage that doesn't get a lot of respect or love, and it's really the longest life stage that we have in our lives. It might last as long as 35 to 75. So
Wow.
thank you for giving us some wisdom.
Well, thank you. You and your Modern Elder Academy has been very pivotal and helpful to me during this transition. So I'm thrilled. I'm happy to know you. Everyone, you should go to MEA. It's really amazing. And thanks for having me on your podcast.
Doesn't Sara Blakely have infectious joy? I love hanging out with this woman, whether it's in this case across a screen or in person in Baja or in Santa Fe, because she's been at both of our campuses. My three lessons from this episode were: number one, she reminds me of Liz Gilbert. And the reason I say that, Elizabeth Gilbert, also an MEA faculty member and friend, wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And then wow, when your first thing is a success, how do you do the second thing? You have to have a growth mindset, be willing to fail, be a beginner again. Not easy, but Liz did that. And Sara did that with Sneaks, the follow-up to Spanx. These sneakers that are, I wouldn't call them controversial, but they haven't. There's a lot of people who are, when you've had a big success like she has had with Spanx, there's a lot of people who just sort of want to cut you down. And what is so beautiful about Sara is she's willing to try and make this new business a success, even when there's a lot of naysayers. So she's got a confidence and a courage and a conviction to everything she does. Secondly, I really love the fact, and she's told me this in person, but I love the fact she actually talked about it on the episode. The fact that it was her father, and it was actually her father when he was leaving home. His parents were getting divorced, and her father was really in a place where he knew that she was going to struggle by the fact that her parents were no longer going to live together. And he gave her these Wayne Dyer the sort of self-help guru, Wayne Dyer cassettes in these little cassette cases in a bowl. She said that dark times have a hidden blessing. And I think that's really true. Again, that's a perfect, frame to think about the midlife chrysalis. The midlife chrysalis is a time where not everything on the external is happening in the way you want it to. But on the inside, your painful life lessons are the raw material for your future wisdom. And for her, that time in her life, which was a difficult time, it was in her teen years, allowed her to start getting more versed in this idea of how do you shift your mindset to a positive mindset. And she's certainly had that her whole life since then. And then finally, I loved her reference to intuition being like a car radio. What are you doing to actually better tune in that intuition so you can get the downloads? Sarah's funny because she's a very successful. She's a billionaire. I think the first self-made billionaire businesswoman in the U.S. And yet, when you hear her talk about her inspiration, her intuition, and how she comes up with really interesting ideas as a conduit and a catalyst, it's often going back to the intuition. It's going back to believing that there's messages being sent to her. Now, some people, you might hear someone say that and say, like, that person's crazy. Sarah's not crazy. It's worked for her. So my question to you is, how are you tuning in your car radio for your intuition, whether through meditation or journaling or coming to an MEA workshop? What is it that's going to allow you to invest in your intuition? Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Midlife Chrysalis. This show is produced by Midlife Media. If you enjoyed this episode, help us spread the word by subscribing and leaving a review on your favorite platform.